On behalf of myself and my co-chair, Premier Charest, and the governors and premiers at this table, this has been an extraordinarily productive conference, and it has exceeded my expectations. I think we've made extraordinary progress on ensuring that we continue to be the region that leads on climate change and a cleaner energy future, that makes up in the areas where we have to gain momentum. And clearly the conversations about moving from gasoline-powered automobiles to other ways of powering our transportation future are absolutely critical. We also heard very encouraging reports on the progress that we're making for higher speed rail from New York to Montreal with a spur to Boston, and that's incredibly encouraging to think that in just a few short months we could be already cutting off as much as an hour and a half on the journey currently from St. Albans down. The border crossing issue that Premier Charest and others have offered such leadership on are going to allow us to make great gains. So this has been extraordinarily productive. On the issue of electrification of our transportation infrastructure, I just want to turn it over to my co-chair, Premier Charest, to share an idea that we had hatched, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions. But really, Premier Charest was the lead creator of this particular idea that is going to be rolled out, so I defer now to my co-chair, Premier Charest.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor Shumlin, and thank you for a very successful meeting and focused very much on energy, environment, transport issues that are at the very heart of the relationship between the northeast of New England and also eastern Canada. And premiers and governors have had a very fruitful, very open discussion today, and the format that you chose, Governor, was a very good format to encourage that discussion. Governor Shumlin and I met yesterday and had discussed a number of bilateral issues, but on energy and on the electric car, we felt that there's something more that we could do to advance this file and the conversion towards a new mode of transport. So we're announcing today that we have mandated our respective officials. I see Mary Powell here, who is with us, of Green Mountain Power Corporation, to examine the ability or the project of doing a green route between Montreal all the way down to Vermont, and a green corridor with recharging stations for electric cars. So, and actually I don't think that's too complicated to do, Peter, and we can probably accomplish that in a timely manner and send a pretty powerful signal that this is where the future is. So inspired by the good work of a number of our officials and the talent we know that is out there, we hope that by next year, when we will meet in Quebec City, because the next meeting will be in Quebec City next year, that we'll be able to report some real progress in this project. I'll say a few words in French about this, if you'll allow me. Le gouverneur Shumlin et moi avons conclu que nous pouvions aller plus loin encore dans la mise en place d'une route verte et l'électrification des transports, et nous allons donc, et nous avons mandaté nos équipes respectives pour étudier la mise en place d'une route verte entre Montréal et le Vermont, et en particulier peut-être Burlington, avec des bornes de recharge. Alors nos équipes respectives, à la fois du ministère des Ressources naturelles, Hydro-Québec, Green Mountain Power, qui est représenté aujourd'hui par Mary Powell, auront cette tâche, et nous espérons que d'ici la réunion qui aura lieu à Québec l'an prochain, on pourra vous faire un rapport sur l'évolution de ce magnifique projet. Thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to you, Governor.
Thank you, Premier Charest, for your leadership on this and so many other important issues that are moving us forward, and I look forward to working together with my agencies and yours to bring about the Green Corridor as quickly as we know how. I'm grateful to Green Mountain Power at this end, to Gas Metro, and to others for making it possible. We'd be happy to take any questions that you have, and we'll just call upon you as you have them, and I just want to point out that any of us are willing to answer questions as we go forward. So take it away, team.
Governor Shumlin, there were protesters outside yesterday and a little bit today as you guys were discussing other issues that they weren't discussing the same issues they were discussing. Did you all discuss with each other, maybe privately, what they were talking about, and what is your reaction to their protests?
Well, you know, we've been working hard inside, and I think really I think the message that's important to convey is you will not find a group of premiers and governors anywhere in America or Canada that are as committed to getting us off our addiction to oil, ensuring that we have a better planet for our future, and ensuring that we move as quickly as we know how to undo the environmental sins that have been created for our regions. And therefore, when I see the protests that are taking place, I just want to say I think we're in harmony with much of their agenda. Our job as premiers and governors is to ensure that we get this one right. When you're dealing with the kind of natural disasters that have plagued us, where we lost businesses, we've lost homes, we've lost lives, both sides of the border, we have huge challenges together. So when I see protests, suggesting that we need to move to renewables, that we need to ensure that we get off of oil and create jobs by more energy efficiency and the other issues that they're addressing, I just think you'll find that we're inside here doing the hard work to deliver on those wishes.
Was there any disagreement? Did tar sands come up?
Well, I think I don't think there's a disagreement. I think there's a recognition of a reality, and that is that the United States could end its dependence on non-North American fuel, and that's an exciting proposition for us all, even while we continue our movement from very high polluting fossil fuels to less polluting, and ultimately, to the greatest extent possible, to zero emissions. This is a continuum. We recognize it as a continuum, and we recognize it as being in the best strategic interest of both Canada, the United States, and Mexico, for that matter, that the United States get off of its reliance on other continent fuels.
And Governor Shumlin, on that note, the use of police, the reaction police had, do you have any thoughts about that?
You know, we have a tradition in Vermont of, first of all, active and involved participation in our democracy. That's what makes the state so great, as well as expressing our opinions peacefully and with extraordinary respect. And most of the protests included all those ingredients. It was good people out here expressing their point of view on issues that really matter to the future of the planet and the future of Vermont and all of our regions. Obviously I was as disappointed as any Vermonter that there were a few who didn't follow the usual tone that blesses this state, and I think Burlington Police Department did a great job of dealing with that, but all they wanted to do was ensure that no one's freedom was obstructed to move and to get where they needed to go, and I think Vermonters joined me in understanding that we all want to express our point of view, but when you start telling people that they can't move out of an area that they need to move out of to get to where they need to be, that's not usually in the spirit of the way we do it here in the state of Vermont.
Question for Mr. Shumlin, David Gentino with the CBC. Am I correct thinking that you are not condemning tar sands as such, as a group of elected officials?
We didn't bring up the issue of tar sands because I think there's diversity of opinions among the premiers and the governors on exactly the best approach to that evolution of technology. I have been outspoken as a governor, in my own view, not representing this group, in saying that I do believe that when our addiction to oil becomes so intense that we have to start mining for tar sands, we should work more quickly to move to renewables that don't emit carbon and compromise our kids and our grandkids' future. And I am extremely concerned about the lack of political discourse about the challenge we're facing as a planet. Politicians don't like to talk about it. I don't mind. I believe it's the single most important issue that we face as elected officials. I truly truly believe that my kids and your grandkids' future depends upon how quickly we move to get off of oil of all forms. And tar sands is certainly a great example of our desperation to be addicted to a fuel of the past.
Could I just add to that? I think that today's and yesterday's endeavors were to celebrate and demonstrate the progress that we're making, and the desire of everyone at this table to continue that process. In fact, at the Premier's suggestion, we adopted 36.3, a resolution concerning emissions, and looking at going further than we've ever gone before. This is a continuum, and as I've said several times today, Connecticut only generates 2 to 3% of its energy by coal, perhaps the dirtiest of fuels historically that's been used to generate electricity in the United States, but it used to be much higher. We've gone to other ways to produce that energy, and now we're talking about new uses of electric energy, such as cars. So I don't think we should make judgments about where we're going to be 50 years from now based on where we have to be over the next 5 or 6 or 10 years. We're going to be a lot further along in 50 years. We're going to be a lot cleaner in 50 years than we are today, but we need to recognize the obligation of moving down that continuum of ever cleaning our environment.
I just think it's worth mentioning as a follow-up to Governor Malloy's comments that, what we're really all about right here at this table is jobs and economic opportunities for a better future for both the eastern provinces and the Northeast governors, our states and our region collectively. And there is no doubt in my mind that as we make this transformation to the kind of energy investments, renewable energy investments, energy efficiency investments that we're talking about, which are not jobs that can be offshored to China and India, but remain right here when we do energy efficiency, when we use less resource to power a better future. We're talking about job creation, and the evidence of that right here in the state of Vermont is the Labor Department announced a month ago that Vermont has more green high-tech jobs per capita than any of the 50 states. So this is a job creation issue, and it's not only an environmental issue, it's a job creation issue, and I think that's where we find consensus.
Okay, one last question. You want to better coordinate distribution grids and your energy policies within the Northeast. How long do you think that shift can take? 5 years, 10 years, 15 years?
Hard to put a timeline on it, but I can tell you as leaders of our respective states and provinces, we understand that the ability to deliver on a cleaner energy future requires an upgraded and more modernized grid. Here in Vermont, we intend to have smart meters on every single home in Vermont within the next within several months. I know that the other states and many of the provinces are doing the same to allow us to use power better. But as we move to more small community-generated renewables, the grid needs to be upgraded. As we talk about the opportunities for more baseload power from Hydro-Quebec or from Labrador, obviously we need grid and distribution improvements and changes that will bring us into the 21st century energy future.
The conference has resolved to seek out higher speed rail opportunities for the region. Again, I'm going to ask about a timeline there. Has there been discussion of a timeline, and what are the obstacles that stand in the way? What are the necessary steps that need to be taken in order to make that a reality?
I think the encouraging part about our promise as a region to deliver on higher speed rail is that I am convinced that we will be the first region in the two countries, Canada and the United States, to actually deliver higher speed rail. Now, you just heard from Governor Patrick in Massachusetts, from his representative, as well as from Governor Malloy in Connecticut, the improvements that they're making right now. Those folks are driving track today, fixing problems in the line right now. They're going to make that train faster within the next several months. Now you add in the extraordinary work that Premier Charest has done with his federal government, that we've done with ours, to have an instantaneous border crossing in Montreal. And I'm convinced that you will see higher speed rail by 2013, and you will see the Montreal connection not long after that. Now, we're not going to give you a time commitment on that, but we understand that our jobs future, our green energy future, our tourism future is linked to higher speed rail, and we're delivering on the promise of getting it done as premiers and governors that are united on this subject. The good news was pointed out by Governor Malloy of Connecticut. We're delighted that there are some some governors in America who've drunken a lot of tea, who are not accepting the federal money to upgrade their lines. We want them to drink more of that tea. We want more of their loot. We're going to keep building this thing until we deliver.
Jenny Day with Fox 44 and ABC 22. One of you mentioned that in 50 years our energy will be even cleaner than it is today. Just wondering where you think we'll be getting our energy from at that time, and if that's perhaps a concern of the protesters.
You know, I'm going to let some other folks speak to that, but I'll just say very briefly, Vermont's plan is pretty clear. We want to generate as much local renewable resource as we possibly can build out, at the same time that we continue to rely on base load power from our friends in Quebec, who we've had a long-term relationship with, good, clean, renewable hydro, and the possibility of tapping into Labrador power and other renewable resources that provide base load power at a predictable and affordable price. Governor Malloy has said price is important. We agree. So we want renewables at an affordable price. We think with base load from hydro we can get there.
I think we had a long discussion today about the necessity of lowering the effective cost, which is the comparative cost of electricity in New England, as an economic imperative, which should be addressed at the same time we're addressing emissions. So specifically to your question, as the United States enjoys the bounty of going from a 40-year supply of natural gas to 150 to perhaps 250 years, the obvious answer is that there'll be a lot more energy generated by natural gas in the United States than is currently being generated. And this represents an enormous opportunity to clean our environment, or to make our environment cleaner. In our New England discussion earlier this morning, I pointed out that we're the tailpipe for the United States emissions. And much of the pollution flowing in the state of Connecticut flows through Indiana, from Indiana and southern Illinois and other Midwestern states, where very large percentages of that energy, electric energy, is being generated by the burning of coal in obsolete, quite frankly, plants, which aren't removing as much of the toxins as they could if they were more modern. So to use my terminology previously, this is a continuum, but this is also a unique opportunity in our ability to choose other fuels that are now cost comparative, and in some senses may, because of the cost of retrofitting some of the older coal-burning plants, may actually be a better technology delivered at less expense. So I think the obvious answer is we're going to get effectively cheaper, not necessarily dollar for dollar, but on a comparative basis, and substantially cleaner in a relatively short period of time. And part of that equation is other North American power sources, if they can come online in the United States at a comparative price.
And one more quick question, thank you by the way, for the recharging stations, what's the time frame for something like that? How quickly could that exist?
Well, he's going to do it by next summer.
Thank you, Governor. At this rate, we'll bring that all the way down to Hartford, Connecticut. Well, I'm announcing a change. And we can do it very rapidly. We're implementing it now in Quebec. We're doing it with the private sector and a number of partners. We've decided that this is going to be a high priority for us. Our objective is that by 2020, 25% of the what we call light vehicles, cars and light trucks that will be sold in Quebec will be electric. 25% of what will be sold. It's a very ambitious goal, and we have a menu of things that we are doing, but recharging stations is part of the challenge. So we're deploying now as we speak, but in discussing this with Governor Shumlin, it makes sense that we work on a green corridor that will start from Montreal all the way down to Vermont and to Burlington, and as Governor Malloy announced, we could try next year to try to reach Hartford, Connecticut. And then by the time we hit Miami, it'll be our third meeting or fourth meeting. So
Governor Scott won't want it.
Let me just say that we, as I told my counterparts, Connecticut will announce its first long-range energy plan in the coming weeks, and that will be addressed in it.
Any other questions? Take it away.
My name is Kevin Ryan from True North. If a tar sands pipeline were to, there be a firm plan to bring that through Vermont and New England, ultimately, is that something that you would support or reject coming through the state?
You know, I have so few hours in the day to deal with things that might happen that I don't talk much about things that will never happen. And that goes in the category of things that I believe will never happen.
Okay. And just one question about the protest the other day. From the video that was in the Free Press this morning, it appeared that while the protester was deeply uncivil, they weren't making any physically violent moves, but the police did open fire on the protesters with non-lethal weapons. Do you think that was an appropriate response?
You know, in fairness to not speaking about something that I don't know all that I should about because I've been too busy here with my colleagues trying to get the hard work done, I'm not going to comment on any of the videos. I haven't seen them. All I can tell you is I have tremendous confidence in the Burlington Police Department. I spoke with the mayor last night. He was chagrined that after such a great day of protests, Vermont style, the way we do things in Vermont, where people expressed their opinion, had a good time doing it, a good dialogue, that there was a very small number of people that made it very, very difficult for the Burlington Police Department to maintain the level of civility that we respect in the state. And I haven't seen the videos, so I can't really comment on that.
Good afternoon, gentlemen and lady. You guys have passed your resolutions. You've said that you've been making progress in environmental, energy, etc. What sorts of concerns do you have that the federal governments could forestall any possible progress or plans? In the U.S., I know some of the Republicans in Congress may do some things to stop EPA progress, etc. So what sorts of concerns do you have that the federal governments might forestall any progress that you're making?
Well, we have to stay on top of them. I've got to tell you that, you know, Governor Malloy is absolutely correct that we, not only Connecticut, but all of the New England states and all of the eastern provinces are the tailpipe for the dirty coal that's burned in other parts of the United States of America. And they do that to get cheap power. We are blessed by the fact that natural gas prices have gotten so low that it's making some of those old dirty coal plants uneconomical, and we can only hope that that continues to be the case. But I can tell you that when we go down as national governors to the National Governors Association meetings, I will never forget at my first meeting a year ago, January, meeting with the president, the first 4 questions to the president from governors were from coal-burning states complaining that he's having the EPA crack down on their ability to mine and burn dirty coal. And they don't sit there and consider the fact that we are the dumping ground of their irresponsible energy policy. So what we do as New England Northern governors, Northeast governors, is fight for our rights. And we will use the courts, we will use our mouths, we will use everything we know how to ensure that not only New England doesn't get destroyed environmentally from the burning of that coal, but that our colleagues and friends in Eastern Canada, who don't have as much of a voice in Washington for obvious reasons, that we protect their interests too. And that's why this association is so important, and this the collegial relationship that we have with them. They are also getting dumped on by those coal emissions, and it's unconscionable that we allow that to continue when we know that we have cheaper, better, cleaner energy resources. It's just pure greed.
Let me just say this very briefly as a follow-up to what was, I think, a fine explanation. There is no constitutional or God-given right to pollute the air of your neighbor. Because of historical anomalies, we've tolerated that entirely for too long a period of time. Recent appeals court decision has made it clear that not only does the EPA have the right to regulate, but it actually finds that right in personal health of the individuals who are being adversely impacted. So our state is prepared to work by itself or with other states, and I think we'll work with other states to assure that our citizens can share in the bounty of a cleaner energy source than we might have imagined would be available to the United States.
Can I just add, my understanding is that the court case was about regulations that came from the Clean Air Act voted in 1990, which was also came about because of the work done within this forum on SO2 emissions and on what we called acid rain. And Canada and the government of the day in Canada worked diligently to convince the American administration, the Reagan and then Bush father, to bring forward the Clean Air Act. And then there was some tampering with the regulations and then court action. I mean, that's at the very heart of why this forum exists. And to just add a context to your question about our role, I have the privilege of participating in a lot of international forums. It is recognized since the signing of the Kyoto Protocol that the hard work done in reducing greenhouse gas emissions is done at the state, subnational, federated level. We are the ones who carry the load. In fact, it's now recognized in the text that we do 80% of the work. And the progress made in the world over the last few years has been done at our level, and we are the ones. And we are often cite the work done by this forum in international forums. And today we reported that our objective of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions set in 2001 for 2010 has been met and exceeded. So we can be proud of that accomplishment. That's one of the issues we'll be dealing with next year. So what are we about? We're about energy, clean energy, decarbonizing our economies, and a cleaner environment, and the recognition that we live in the same place. So we can be pretty proud of what we've accomplished.
And maybe that's a great note to wrap this up. I want to thank all you for your diligence. I promised the premiers and the governors that we're going to get a sighting of Champ before they go home, and we got to go out in that lake and find Champ. So thanks so much for joining us.